Oppenheimer is the much anticipated biopic by filmmaker Christopher Nolan and stars Cillian Murphy as J. Robert Oppenheimer, the famous and infamous physicist who helped create the atomic bomb that helped end World War II and also changed history. Alongside Murphy are a huge star-studded cast, including Emily Blunt as Oppenheimer's wife, Kitty, Matt Damon as General Leslie Groves, Robert Downey Jr. as Louis Strauss, Florence Pugh as Jean Tatlock, Oppenheimer's girlfriend, Gary Oldman as Harry Truman, and Tom Conti as the famous Albert Einstein. Of course, as most of you might know, this film was very much memed and paired alongside the Barbie movie as part of the Barbenheimer meme, as it's called. And, everyone talking about going to see both films together back to back. And while I did not see both films back to back, I saw both films one day apart from one another. So I did see both, and I can safely say that, like Barbie, I really enjoyed Oppenheimer. I'm usually into history. History movies can be a little murky, whether it's because they're not entertaining enough or they lack some of the historical accuracy that is much appreciated from most history fans and people with a basic appreciation for history. I don't know a complete lot about J. Robert Oppenheimer or the Manhattan Project, but I do know that they've gotten most of the basics right. Certain details, whether about Oppenheimer's life or the Los Alamos area where they kept most of the scientists and their families to work on the Manhattan Project for its entire duration before testing and during testing. Other than that, I'm not sure how much they have changed, but either way, this is a good film, and it definitely gives you a lot, of the process of the testing, but also the duration of Oppenheimer's life, or at least the more important parts of it. Not so much childhood, and more so just straightforward adulthood, but still quite a lot of that adulthood. Because Oppenheimer covers so much about his life and the Manhattan Project, naturally the film is very long, marking at 3 hours exactly, not counting credits and whatever previews that you'll see at the movie theater. Is it truly deserving of that runtime? Not exactly. There's many little moments that could have been cut that would have saved on time, so it might at least have been like 2 hours and 40 plus minutes if stuff was cut out. But I appreciate when a filmmaker is able to get enough freedom to put out something they really want, and what they really want might be that runtime. Who knows if this is truly the final product that Christopher Nolan wanted. Either way, I like the finished product for the most part, and I hope that you guys might too if you end up seeing this film. This movie is not entirely for the faint of heart. A lot of moments involving the atomic bomb are very intense and have a long and almost painful build-up, and other scenes have similar build-ups as well. And on top of that, it's also, rated R, so there's also some nudity on top of, adult language. So there's that. Though I'm sure a lot of you people probably already know that it's rated R. Though I would also say that it's better that it is, because this is not entirely a film that younger people should see, regardless of the nudity or the language, because it is a tough idea in terms of really thinking about it, like the idea of creating such a powerful weapon, but also the possibility of destroying the world, whether it's by a alternative calculation on specific atoms that might become catastrophic instead of the desired result and in the world, or the fear that we kind of have today with nuclear weapons, that being different world superpowers just throwing out missiles at each other and almost destroying the world by themselves. All of those things are very scary, so I can't imagine most younger people would be able to handle that for the most part. At least, the 10 to 13 range. Definitely not below that for sure. But who knows? That might just be my thoughts, but it is a very depressing set of thoughts when you watch the movie and think all about that. As I usually say, I'm not entirely great at measuring how good the writing of a film is, as there's so many other things that make a movie outside of that, because there's also the directing, the acting, the editing. For sure, the editing can make or break a movie a lot of the time, but I will give credit to Christopher Nolan, Kai Bird, and Martin Sherwin, who are all the writers of the film, and of course give credit to Christopher Nolan himself for directing it. He did a pretty good job. Of course, he is famous for his directing, having directed classics like Memento, The Dark Knight, and Inception. So he's definitely got a lot on his belt. And this is probably, I think, the first film he's done with Universal, because he used to work a lot for Warner Brothers. Because of course The Dark Knight was Warner Brothers, but so was Inception, Tenet, and many others. So this is one of many firsts for Nolan. And it's also the first R-rated film he's done since Insomnia, which is kind of interesting as well. Also, in terms of specific things that I really liked, the acting, of course, is great. Something you'd expect from a movie of this caliber, and Oppenheimer does not disappoint. Of course, there's Cillian Murphy as the man himself, who does a fantastic job, not only in terms of just simply acting, but also, kind of imitating Oppenheimer's voice. Of course, Cillian Murphy is not American, he is Irish, so it's impressive that he not only pulls off an American accent, but also Oppenheimer's specific type of voice, which is distinctive enough. And it sounds quite a bit like the old, film recordings that I've seen of him, where he, mentions famously that he has become deaf, the destroyer of worlds. But of course, you've also got other heavy hitters like Emily Blunt, who isn't in the movie too much, but has some good moments. Robert Downey Jr. does a pretty good job as Louis Strauss, especially near the end, where he's, gotten more angry, more emotional about, what has unfolded across the movie's events. Then you've got literally everyone else. Florence Pugh, I would shout out again, because she's also got a small role, especially, being Oppenheimer's girlfriend, or technically mistress, because unfortunately that was something that happened with Oppenheimer. He did basically cheat on his wife with her, which is sad, but at least they didn't, pull back on that. They didn't try to make Oppenheimer seem like the greatest guy ever, because, he wasn't. No one is perfect, and this is a clear showcase of that. And then there's a few others. Einstein was a pretty good, part with Tom. Sorry, I forget his name for a second there, but he's got a bit of a presence to him, despite also having the shortest screen time in the movie. But it's always cool to see him, especially because he, in real life, had such a big role as well when it came to science, and also a part to play with, with the science behind the atomic bomb. The final thing that I thought really stood out to me as fantastic in this movie were the visuals. Mostly, the moments where they show visuals of the different, bits of science happening, like the atoms coming apart or certain particles moving around and all these other little things involving the very, very close look into science itself. I thought those were really cool visuals. Of course, the explosions are fantastic to look at. Supposedly, Christopher Nolan filmed real explosions, of course, small controlled explosions, and not at a real atomic bomb, of course. But he did that. But it was also, enhanced with VFX, but also special effects, as it's also, of course, called, alongside the, scientific close-ups. And I want to make that clear, because supposedly, according to an article, the VFX team were not really credited in the credits. Unfortunately, I did not pay attention to that, so I am not sure about that. If so, that kind of sucks, and I hope that maybe they'll put the credit in later, in later editions, whether that's for a reissue for the film's remaining theatrical run, or for digital and physical releases. Because as cool as it is to know that explosion was mainly, or all the explosions were mainly practical, it's always good to give credit where credit is due for a pretty overworked, part of the business, VFX teams, alongside, standard animators for animated films and all of these different people. Writers, of course, as well. Also pretty underrated, people, which is also why I gave them a shout out the most this time. In terms of things that I didn't like about the film, the thing that really comes to mind is the soundtrack. Usually a film soundtrack is either outstanding or kind of just meh, or even bad. This is an interesting case where the soundtrack itself is okay, but it's the placement of it and the volume of it that is a little odd to me, because it feels like there's a lot of scenes that should just be silent in terms of the music, that have kind of loud, almost meant to sound epic feeling music, and it just feels a little inappropriate at times. But there are still plenty of quiet scenes in the movie, so it's not a loud movie that's always constantly grabbing your attention. It is trying to take its time, which makes sense with the runtime, but in its, tone for the most part, it does, stay quiet and respectful of your time and your attention, let's say. And then, of course, there's tiny nitpicks that don't entirely need to be brought up outside of, I would say, the only truly weird scene in the movie, that being the part where, I'm not gonna completely spoil it, so let's just say a character is looking at another character and they then start envisioning that person essentially having sex with another person who isn't there at the moment. It's just kind of a weird moment to me. It just felt weird, mostly just because it feels a little pointless compared to the other bit of nudity and sex in the film, I'll say. But oh well, that's just my thing. In conclusion, I highly recommend Oppenheimer and suggest that you go see it if you're at all interested in biopics or the atomic bomb and its creation or World War II. But if you're wanting to support the writers' strike, the writers and actors' strikes, by not seeing stricken content by stricken studios, then that is completely fine with me. Do what you want, but I'm just here to review the film and recommend it, so that's all I have to say. I'm gonna give Oppenheimer a 9 out of 10. I hope you enjoyed this review of Oppenheimer. Did you see it? What did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know in the comments down below. Maybe even subscribe to the channel and like this video. Other than that, I will see you guys next time, and please take care of there. Goodbye.